Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu salam ala rasulullah. Musa AS, Moses, the Prophet Moses, one of the 5 greatest people to have ever lived. He's part of the dream team. Ulil azmi min al-rusul, those of most fortitude. Top 5 prophets, top 5 men to have ever lived. Joseph, Yusuf AS, who we spoke about previously, brought the Bani Israel, the children of Israel, which is his father, which are the children of Ishaq, children of Ibrahim AS, he brought them into Egypt. Because there was a famine, because he became the prince. We went through the whole story in a number of parts. They get to Egypt. They're there for some time, but they get enslaved by the original Egyptians. They're a different ethnicity, different group, like the Bani Israel. They're immigrants, so they're refugees. They get enslaved under the Egyptian family, like the Pharaoh and his family, and they're mistreated, abused, whipped, beaten, etc., forced to build grand structures for them. Generation after generation, possibly the 2 most, if not the worst, manifestation of slavery in human history. Then Musa AS is born and grows up. He's from Bani Israel as well. He's from Ibrahim AS, hundreds of years later. But like we said last time in part 1, he ends up growing up in the palace of the Pharaoh, which is a miracle from Allah. Allah put in the Pharaoh a special love for Moses. He looks at the baby, could have had him killed like he had hundreds or thousands of other, Jewish boys. And he chose to take care of him, and him and his wife were like, we'll adopt him. So you can only imagine. Now, the Quran, as far as I know, to the best of my abilities, maybe there are hadiths on the topic, I'm not sure, but the ayahs don't go into detail of his upbringing in the palace. But you can use your imagination. You can realistically or reasonably assume certain things. Best education in the world at that time, he's under the Pharaoh, right? The best private tutors in whatever the subjects of the time. I'm sure there's some math. They built the pyramids. They definitely knew something of math. Some math and science or so on, whatever they had at the time. Reading, writing, speaking, what have you. Also, riding horses, swords, arrows, bows, etc. Different skills. So he had the best upbringing, the best teaching, the best education, the best food, the best bed to sleep on, the best, the most comfortable life, etc., etc. You can imagine, right? And you can use your imagination. But yeah, it comes a time where he starts wondering if, what's going on, right? He doesn't look like them. Different hair, different skin, different facial features, etc. He's not Egyptian, right? So he can tell that eventually at a certain age that these are his adopted parents. He sees that those who are enslaved under them are his actual people. He knows that he's from them. And he has, and don't forget the prophets, even before they were, let's say 40 years old for many of them, when they became prophets or they got revelation for the first time. Before that, they already had their fitrah, their nature was intact. They already had, a good sense of morals and ethics, even if they didn't know all the rules that Allah wanted from them. Even if they didn't always know the solutions to their society's problems, they didn't have Allah's guidance on those things. They had a general sense of something's going on. People are being unjust. This person hurting this person, that's wrong. This person's abusing their power. This person's rich and they're abusing the poor. This person's strong, abusing the weak, etc. They had a sense of that as wrong. Tried to help, tried to do something about it. Muhammad ﷺ did his best to take care of the poor and the homeless and needy. And at certain times he would go and meditate in Cave Hira because he's thinking how am I supposed to help my people? I care about them, I love them, but they're hurting each other. There's a lot that's going on. And so Musa goes through a phase where he's wondering these things and thinking naturally. And before he becomes a prophet, though, some years before that, he starts helping out with those who are enslaved under the Pharaoh. He would be like, let's say an old woman is getting whipped because she didn't lift the stone heavy enough, or whatever the case is, right? I don't know if women lifted stones at that time, but he would come in there, come into one of the guards. He's the prince, and everyone knows him and knows his face and knows his name. He'd come to the guards and be like, yo, take it easy on her, right? Some guys, he'll come help him with the stone. He's also big, strong, healthy, fit. So anyway, and you can use your imagination, right? He's helping them, he's trying to be there. He will rest under the shade. Sometimes he'll go under there when it's hot and lift with them and carry with them and try to get guards to not be, not to overstep their bounds. You can say he cared about civil rights and human rights. But one particular time, a guard was being especially rough with someone who's Bani Israel, so it's one of his relatives. And in order to defend that man against the guard who's being aggressive, he punched that guard, but he knocked him out in one punch, killed him. So it's manslaughter, not murder. It was not intentional. He wasn't trying to kill him, but he was trying to defend this other person. Came between them, gave him one punch, and just knocked him out. He's big, strong, tall, fit, healthy, the best training, the best food, the best education, what have you. Allah built him this way as well. It's genetic. He punched him and knocked him out, killed him. And then he realized that he had murdered one of the Pharaoh's men. Right? Imagine if you kill a cop in America. Even if you say it's self-defense, the chance that you're going to do well in court is very unlikely. Most likely you get life in prison or even the death penalty or, what is it called when you're in the hole? Not just in prison, but you're isolated. You probably can get the worst possible or supermax prison. Anyways, you get the worst treatment, and it's understandable. I mean, they're law enforcement, right? So he did basically the equivalent at that time. So he's now an enemy of the state, wanted, etc. He decides to run. Someone tells him, listen, the Pharaoh and his Pharaoh and his inner group, they were talking about you, like you're wanted dead or alive. You better escape. Someone from inside was giving him news, right? So there's a believer from amongst Pharaoh's inner circle. We'll get to that eventually. But there's someone who is sitting there, like just the Pharaoh's right there, 4 or 5 people, and he's not with the Pharaoh. A lot of them also thought the Pharaoh was overdoing it, but not everyone's gonna say something. But someone was like decided to believe and follow Moses when he becomes a prophet. We'll get there. And his own wife, amazing stuff. But one guy gives him news that he needs to run, so he runs away. He's in the middle of the desert. He has, a chain, probably like gold and bracelets and jewelry and like a nice robe, and he has all this. Starts taking it off, trying to survive. He's in the desert, comes close to unrecognizable after a day or 2 or so, hasn't ate or drank. You can imagine whatever disheveled state he's in, and tired and hungry and thirsty and almost dehydrated, almost passed out. He's going east from Egypt. He reaches what's now like Palestine, Sham, Syria, Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon. I don't know exactly where. I think it's Palestine, I'm not sure. But the Sham area from Egypt. And there's more greenery, there's more water and so on than in Egypt. Egypt is mostly desert. But he gets to some area there, and or on the way to, maybe if it's not Sham, then maybe it's like northeast Egypt, I'm not sure. But he gets there, and there is what a lot of scholars believe it was a Prophet Shu'aib. So whether he's a prophet or not, some debate. But definitely he met a wise, knowledgeable older man. But the story goes that he gets there, and there's like a well of water, or an area where there's water, like a pond, and people were taking turns, or not even taking turns, they're like competing and fighting each other on who's going to get their sheep and their livestock to drink from the water. And they're mostly men, so they're like, shouldering each other and pushing each other, and they're also managing their animals, and they're like, talking and yapping and whatever, but it's like a whole, right, it's a good old boys club kind of thing. And he sees Musa AS, watches this, he drinks some water, he's a big tough guy, he don't mind pushing between them, getting his way, he gets his water, goes and sits under the shade, he was about to pass out, but there's shade, there's water, he's doing okay. He sits under the shade, and he makes dua to Allah, like, I have nothing, I'm in this new land. I don't know if he even knows their language, probably not. And he doesn't necessarily know who they are. They definitely don't recognize him, which is good and bad. He's not a prince, but he's also not wanted. But they don't recognize him. He's in a new land, and he almost passed out, almost died, etc. He sits under the shade and says, oh Allah, basically I got nothing. I'm in total need. Whatever you send me, I'll be grateful. I'm your servant, I'm in need. Inni lima anzalta ilayya min khayrin faqir. I'm poor, I'm in need, etc. Whatever you send me is good. He sits in the shade, and then just as soon as he does that, he sees in the distance that all these men are like fighting, competing for the water. He sees that there's two young ladies that have also their sheep and all that. They're clearly like the sheep are trying to get to the water, but they can't go there and just like start, jostling with the men. So they're waiting and they're pulling back their sheep. The sheep want to see the water, and he sees this scene and he's like, okay, maybe I can help them. He has this inner need, and that's how all the prophets were. I want to help, I want to protect people, I want to defend people, I want to help people out, guide them, educate them, and so on. And that's why Allah chooses them as prophets. Prophethood is a gift, but it's also a test. But yeah, they all passed. So he goes to them, he says, yo, what's going on? What's wrong with you guys? Like, what's up? Right? Ma khatbukuma? Like, what's going on here? Tell me, what's the story? And like, there's these men, we're not going to go like fight with the men. And our dad is like an elderly man, he stays at home, and he doesn't have sons, and we're trying to get the sheep. He looks at it, he's like, easy, I got it. He takes their sheep, goes, gets water, brings it back to them. And they're like, wow, you probably saved us an hour or 2. We didn't get harassed, or like, the men didn't look at us in a weird way. They didn't talk about us, they didn't steal our sheep. Nothing happened. You helped us out. This was big. And for him, it was like no big deal. He goes back, sits under the shade. They go home and they tell their dad, like, yo, he's like, you guys are back home already? He's like, nothing happened. It was smooth. You guys are okay. He's worried about them, but he can't really help them. And they're like, well, there's this guy. You can imagine, right? The Quran doesn't go into every detail. You can kind of, put the pieces together. But he sends them back. They go back to him and they come back and they're shy and they're modest and they're like, they probably don't even know his name. Our dad, he invites you to like come over and like he wants to thank you for what you did and maybe pay you for it. And so Musa's like, he just made dua, oh Allah, I got nothing, send me anything. They're like, oh come, our dad wants to meet you. I'm like, okay, he'll go. So yeah, to be continued next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.